Very good, thank you. We would like first of all to greet and thank also the representative of the Embassy of El Salvador. Thank you for being here. We have also here joining with us the Father Leonir Chiarello, the Superior General of Missionaries of St. Charles Scalabrini Fathers, and also our Dean of the Faculty of Theology, Professor Moroni. Thank you for joining us. And let me just give the floor to the Dean of the Faculty. The Faculty of Theology of Urbaniana University was one of the partisan organizers of this conference. And as we are in the home of Urbaniana University, we would like to give him the floor just for a greeting, a brief greeting at the end of this 2 days, intensive days of conference. Please, Dean, the floor is yours.
Grazie e buon pomeriggio a tutti. Ancora un breve saluto anche da parte mia. Innanzitutto un ringraziamento e anche l'onore per aver potuto partecipare e ospitare, soprattutto nella nostra Pontificia Università Urbaniana, questo importante convegno sulla teologia della mobilità umana. Oso dire, come decano della facoltà di teologia, che forse non c'era luogo migliore dove poter parlare della teologia della mobilità umana, grazie soprattutto al fatto che, soprattutto all'aiuto anche al sostegno della congregazione scalabriniana, già da diverso tempo noi lavoriamo su questa tematica, sulla teologia della mobilità umana. E quindi abbiamo, come sapete, una licenza, un percorso di dottorato su questi temi e quindi, ecco, sentitevi a casa perché per noi questa tematica è di casa e quindi è con grande gioia che abbiamo voluto e accettato non solo di ospitare ma di partecipare assieme alla University of Notre e al SIMI a questa grande organizzazione. Ringrazio per questo soprattutto Sua Eminenza Cardinal Fabio Baggio, che è presente qui con noi, che ci ha sostenuto anche chiaramente con il suo Dicastero per lo sviluppo umano integrale, ma anche il padre Leonir Chiarello, generale degli Scalabriniani, e il vicepresidente appunto della University of Notre Dame. Sentivo molte persone che vedete qui presenti sono nostri alunni, sono studenti, e sentivo qui mentre passavo il loro compiacimento, la loro gioia di poter vedere riunito qui insieme tutto il mondo. Noi siamo abituati a vedere all'Urbaniana tutto il mondo riunito, da Papua Nuova Guinea all'Africa, all'Asia, tutti i continenti qua. Però vedere tutto il mondo che riflette insieme su una tematica così importante, così attuale, penso che sia davvero un segno di speranza, abbiamo parlato di speranza, e anche di progettazione futura per il cammino di Chiesa e di università e di teologi che ci attende. Quindi grazie a tutti e mi piace ricordare un'ultima e fare un piccolo riferimento. Il prossimo 1 novembre il Santo Padre Leone XIV proclamerà John Henry Newman dottore della Chiesa. Ecco, John Henry Newman era studente qui nella nostra Università Urbaniana. E John Henry Newman ha vissuto qui al collegio, ha frequentato le lezioni qui di teologia. Mi richiama anche a un altro aspetto che è quello dell'ecumenismo. Quello dell'ecumenismo che è un aspetto anche che cerchiamo di coltivare qui nella nostra università e che soprattutto ci ha visti protagonisti anche in questi 3 giorni, collaborando insieme ad altri membri, ad altri fratelli di altre confessioni cristiane. Quindi questo mi sembra soprattutto bello farlo nel ricordo di questo santo che ha vissuto qui, che ha pensato qui, ha riflettuto e ha fatto anche teologia qui. Ecco, chiediamo anche, direi, la sua protezione perché ci accompagni nella ricerca di nuove vie e di nuovi progetti teologici e pastorali per poter rispondere alle chiese del mondo, alle esigenze della Chiesa e del mondo di oggi. Grazie ancora.
Thank you, Professor Moroni, for the greetings and your words of encouragement, not only greetings. Now, we would like to open the floor in this very important moment of our days of this conference. One of the objectives that we have discussed among the organizing committee was not only to find a way how to give the floor to speakers coming from all around the world, but also to make this conference an open space for sharing ideas and experiences. And that's why we were very engaged on proposing this moment as an open plenary discussion and dialogue where every one of us can share, can offer ideas, actions, proposals for the future. And we think that is one of the most important things. When we go in a conference, is not only what kind of ideas we take, but also the most important things, and friendship, of course, and networking, but it's also how we share of what we do and what we bring back home of this sharing of the experiences, so the ideas and actions that we have shared together. So let's open the floor to this dialogue, open dialogue. That will be opportunity for every one of us that wants to share something. Professor Campese will just give some few suggestions just to move, to open the dialogue, but however, feel free to share and to dialogue. We will have the opportunity, yes, unfortunately, we still have a little technical problem with the microphones, but however, we have the mobile microphone. And please introduce yourself, the organization, or where are you from, and then just take few minutes free time for the discussion and dialogue. The floor is to Professor Campese.
Okay, good evening again to everybody, and as we near the end of this conference, and because we are all, kind of tired, I think, so I'm looking forward to the conclusions. Let's see, let's give some time also to the voices of anybody who wants to say something about what what has really resonated with us during this conference. So this is why we came up with these 4 points. The first one, an interesting insight, idea, experience that resonated with you and you bring back home. This could be one, orientation for this open floor conversation. Second, paths of action vis-a-vis a reality that is characterized by indifference and impotence, lack of humanity, even violence and cruelty. That's what we have heard during these 2 days. And then, migration, a pilgrimage of hope. So what are the sources and resources of our hope? What we have heard also from the other participants, that have, what we have heard in the groups now, what we have heard in the parallel sessions, what we have heard in the reflection and that have been given during these 2 days. Sources and resources of our hope, and then, of course, we want to underline the protagonism, the agency of migrants and refugees themselves. So migrants and refugees as agents, missionaries of social and ecclesial transformation. Here I should remember also the title of the message for the World Day of Migrants for this year, that was precisely this, migrants, missionaries of hope. So these are, the 4 points, and then, any insight, any idea that really has resonated with us during these days. The floor is open, please.
I'd like first of all to give thanks for this opportunity. Coming back to my country after 3 years from Niger, in which country I spent 14 years with migrants, refugees, asylum seekers. It's a golden opportunity, so many thanks. I was a bit afraid during our 2 days because we were speaking about the country of origin, the country of destination. I never heard about the country of transit, in which the people are traveling, are suffering, and they are very often object of violence and death. In the desert, for us, in the sea, but in so other many places. So I'm quite questioned by this disappearing country, the between country. Secondly, at a moment I heard about irregular migration. It's a bit strange to listen in this field, irregular migration. Perhaps irregularized migration is correct. We don't believe in irregular migration. Nobody is irregular in this world. Again, unfortunately, we have normalized in Europe and elsewhere all this detention camp for migrants, refugees as well, in which people spend months, sometimes years. We have normalized this violence that is quite institutional now. It become quite normal. How is possible today to allow this camp, their prison? Perhaps I remember very well when a young fellow from Guinea, West Africa, killed himself here in Rome some time ago. He wrote down, I would like my body to come back to Africa. And finally, concerning all this politics we are implementing to prevent people to come over in a regular way, in a normal way. To get a visa is quite impossible, especially from some area in this world. I'm speaking about Sahel and our West Africa. All that in quite bad silence about the church is not too good to me. We should cry, to allow the silence to cry.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Father. Please. We have un libro que quiere partir.
Aldo, second one here.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for the conference. I appreciated all the presentations, learned quite a bit. But what I want to say is a challenge, if you will. Despite all the great efforts of everyone in this room, and our faith leaders, our Catholic leaders, even the Holy Father, we are losing this debate, not only in the US, but globally. And we're facing a nativist movement that is going to overwhelm us if we don't rethink what our advocacy and messaging strategies should be. I don't think our messages right now reach the people in the middle, the Catholics in the middle who may be ambivalent about the issue, who may be feeling economic stress over the issue, who may think, wow, I'm struggling to support my 2 kids and put them through college, and we're more worried about immigrants coming in, which is what people think sometimes. Do we adjust? Do we have to adjust? I think if we stay with the same script, we will certainly bolster those who agree with us, but is there something else we should be doing to gather more in the middle who might be reachable that we're not reaching? I don't know what the answer is, but I was hopeful in this discussion maybe we could brainstorm about what that path looks like, honoring our principles, honoring Catholic teaching, but perhaps thinking about our messaging, thinking about who we target, trying to understand better the underlying issues behind the xenophobia that we're seeing and the nativist movements that we're seeing, because I don't fully understand it myself, and I'm not sure what the answer is, but I think we need to start thinking outside the box more as to how we hold off what is inevitably coming, not only in the US, but in Europe and other places around the world, where borders are going to be sealed, and the international protection regime is at risk. And we've seen that at the last UNGA meeting, where there's the immigrant opposition is starting to look at the international agreements and trying to weaken them. So I don't mean to be negative. I'm not trying to cast a pall over the conference, but I think it's important that we think about the moment we're in and the challenge that we face, because we might need to change the game plan a bit to win the game in the end. And I know it's not a game because lives are at stake, but we might have to take risks we otherwise might not take in order to meet the moment.
Thank you, Kevin. Let's take a couple of questions here, please, Father, and then there.
I thank you for this 2 days of very, very strong brainstorming and clarifications. I want to touch 2 issues. The commitment for the migration should be connected to the diocesan policies. Every diocese should have a migrant desk. It's a growing phenomenon all over the world, and it is somehow there's a disorganized. Migration desk is not there. The migration commission is there. A policy should be there. A particular percentage of the diocese should be connected to this migrants issue. And the second thing is, all the migrants are not the same level. There are some migrants who are the least in the society, who are forgotten one, who are abandoned one, maybe because of the language, maybe because of minority, maybe religion, maybe caste, maybe tribal. These are the people should be given priority. Most of our discussions, I felt, is going about border issues, settlement, and the passport and the visa. No, I think the internal migrants is a very big issue. 70% of issues are internal migrants, are the poorest people. So the church has to respond to the cry of the poor at the top priority. Therefore, the lost sheep and the forgotten ones should be the migration's top priority. Since this is a global level, this is a global team gathering together, we can make an appeal to the universal church. Our cardinal also is there. So can we make a migrant desk an obligatory in this point of the time? Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for this dialogue. I would like to reply or share my reflections on the question of how do we communicate our message and what might work to Kevin's question over there. Obviously, I don't have all the answers, but just wanted to share a piece of research that, at least to me and my co-author, give us additional hope that there are some ways to actually reduce xenophobia and make people on our side, and that is focusing on educating people on human rights, which I think that's something that also united us and part of what we believe. And what we have found in our research is that teaching and transmitting messages in general through different modes on the universality of human rights as established by the law, and also the human rights of immigrants themselves, do generate some change. And I think at least that can be part of the framework that I think we share and might complement other frameworks, but this one, I think it travels through religious denominations and also people who are not religious. I mean, so that's something that I'm expanding, but we do have some research and a draft of a full paper that we have been circulating. But that, at least to me, is important, which goes back to the issue of education. But I think it's what kind of education, and at least from this piece of evidence, we are seeing that disseminating information of human rights and its universality, and that therefore of immigrants, does work in some way, right? But more research needs to be done, but I think it's, at least to me, encouraging. Thank you.
Grazie, parlerò in italiano. Buonasera a tutti, grazie molto per questo invito a partecipare a questo incontro, a questa conferenza che ho trovato molto utile e anche dal punto di vista pratico credo che è stato utile questi giorni per
Potete
sapere.
dire anche chi siete, così
Sì,
you can
sono
introduce
padre,
yourself.
sì, scusi, sono padre Andriy Hach, provengo da Ucraina, da Keough, lavoro in pastorale per i migranti della nostra chiesa e ci occupiamo sia delle persone sfollate anche per i rifugiati che stanno adesso fuori del paese per causa di guerra. Infatti volevo cominciare questa condivisione dal fatto che siamo ancora in guerra e volevo ringraziare tutti coloro che ci stanno appoggiando in qualsiasi modo il nostro popolo, perché voi veramente siete la voce del nostro popolo nel mondo. E questa è una fase, diciamo, un aspetto della solidarietà che state mostrando verso il popolo ucraino. Vi ringrazio per questo modo di essere vicini con noi. E noi stiamo vivendo temi brutti, tempi di guerra, la guerra che non ha nessuna logica e aggressione molto forte. Per esempio questa notte la città di Keough è stata attaccata da tante armi, circa 500 unità dei droni, di diversi missili che sono stati lanciati verso per raggiungere centrali elettrici e per farci blackout e togliere il riscaldamento. Queste cose così continuano ogni giorno. Anche questa notte è stato colpito un asilo nido a città di Kharkiv, che non ha niente a che fare con i militari, diciamo, era un edificio per bambini e tanti altri edifici di ospedali e di scuole che sono stati distrutti dall'esercito russo. E noi come Chiesa viviamo un momento molto tragico perché abbiamo diverse sfide che scopriamo ogni giorno sempre nuove. Prima di tutto abbiamo un programma che è stato lanciato dalla Chiesa ufficialmente, inizio per sanare le ferite della guerra. Si tratta di ferite non soltanto fisiche, ma ferite psicologiche di cuore, perché tante persone hanno perso i suoi parenti, i padri, i mariti, tante persone hanno perso le sue case, lavoro, business, e stanno passando un periodo brutto che non si trova soluzione. Spesso da noi nella chiesa a cattedrale di Keough vengono le persone, mi chiedono, padre, cosa devo fare? Non ho più la casa. È difficile rispondere a queste persone quando si sente la situazione così. E certe volte è importante stare con loro, stare magari zitti, ma stare con loro è un appoggio per sollevare animo di queste persone. Le sfide anche abbiamo con le famiglie, perché la guerra ha lanciato tante separazioni, perché i mariti stanno combattendo in guerra e le mogli con bambini stanno a casa o stanno all'estero, quindi sono rifugiati. Quindi abbiamo tanti casi di separazioni forzate. Ormai siamo al 4º anno di guerra e quindi queste sfide che la Chiesa sta sopportando in questo momento. Poi le sfide dell'assistenza, assistenza psicologica, spirituale, legale. Le persone che sono sfollate non sanno dove andare, cosa devono cercare per sopravvivere, e anche sociale. E per questo le nostre parrocchie sono diventate non solo punto di preghiera, ma anche punto di accoglienza sociale, dove possono trovare cibo, cose necessarie per la vita e altre cose che hanno bisogno. Il momento della guerra è sempre un momento di un punto non ritorno, perché ciò che si è perso non si può riavere facilmente. Quindi sempre una sfida che porta diverse prospettive per la gente che cerca la sua identità, nuova identità magari, nella vita sociale odierna. In questo momento stiamo parlando di circa oltre 7 milioni di persone rifugiate all'estero, tra cui Europa, anche America del Sud, del Nord e altri paesi. Invece, sfollati interni, abbiamo anche circa 8 milioni di persone che sono stati costretti di lasciare la sua vita, le sue case, abitazioni e portarsi in altre città dove l'ostilità è meno presente. Quindi, cogliendo l'occasione, vi chiedo di non scordare che in Ucraina ancora c'è guerra, e anche magari con le vostre iniziative di preghiera o di altre iniziative che state facendo voi, di essere la voce del popolo ucraino che sta soffrendo in questo momento, un momento brutto. Ma anche altre guerre, è sempre male che porta con sé la guerra. Grazie di nuovo per l'invito.
Grazie Padre per aver condiviso, for sharing with us and for bringing with you the experience of what the refugees situation is. It's not only a movement of space, but it's also the wounds, the wounds that they take back. Thank you. Please.
Thank you very much for this for organizing this conference. And I have 3 points. Let me introduce myself. I'm Lawrence Pedregosa. I'm a theologian from Leuven, but I'm also Filipino. First point that I would like to raise is the question of belongingness beyond the nation states. I think we have to rethink what kind of Christian anthropology can we formulate or reflect on, that we can think of our sense of belongingness beyond state. No? Usually when we introduce ourselves, we think that I come from the Philippines, you come from this country, and this country. And we know that this sense of belongingness is somehow artificial because states are constructed somehow, the sense of nationalism was born sometime 18th century, 19th century. But as we go forward, are we just going to be stuck in that kind of sense of belongingness based on nation states? And we know the underside or the undercurrent of every nation state is that there are people who are not citizens, which are, migrants. So can we rethink of, a kind of Christian anthropology that we can go beyond the nation states. I am thinking of some formulation like human family, political love, civilization of love. I mean, these are theological concepts that can be used, but of course, more reflections can be done. Second point is that I'm thinking in another theological line, is that many Christmases ago, there's this statement by Pope Francis that the Christendom model is, it's already passé. And when we think of the church like a kingdom, an empire, Christendom, there's this assumption of being stable. It will be an eternal kingdom. Forever it will be like that. It doesn't move. But as part of also thinking this, part of the church hierarchy that models after Peter, perhaps we also have to think of, perhaps we have to reclaim Saint Paul as a mission, as the model missionary, as the model migrant, moving around in different churches. And of course, at that time, churches are just small, early Christian communities. And I'm just wondering what will happen if the church doesn't think anymore in the level of, good buildings, like here in Rome, it's so beautiful, but in a smaller scale as a church. So that's ecclesiological. And the third part is, we know that most migrations are connected in finding opportunities, finding work. People won't move just for the sake of moving. There's also this probability of survival, and that part is, getting work opportunities. And we know that modernity has greatly struck in, has been the catalysis for moving people from provinces to cities, just what happened during the Industrial Revolution. But that is in the 18th century, and somehow until now we're still experiencing that, the greater urbanization. From feudal society of agriculture to industrial, the question now is, in the 21st century, what kind of work where people will be migrating into? If work before was feudal, based on land, industry were based on factories in the cities. Now, since the 1960s onwards, we're now living in a knowledge economy where most of the work are done in laptops. Now the question is, will there be a migration from the factory to the laptop? So we have to think of migration in that level, but it's still, of course, speculative. We're just in the first 25 years of the 21st century. So, yeah, that is perhaps some of the aspects that we need to rethink of. Thank you very much. Grazie mille.
Thank you. Here we have the middle.
Hello, I'm Father Derek. I'm coming from Abu Dhabi. And the last point is very much connected to me, because if migrants don't exist, my church doesn't exist. We are a 100% migrant church. So it's a blessing that the migrants are there. Almost 1.5 million Catholics live in this church. All of them, including the bishop, is a migrant. So having said that, I'm not going to speak about the problems and things that it's too long. But one of the issues I would like to highlight is the transition, which one of the brother brought up. We have seen time and again people transiting Dubai, Abu Dhabi, these airports which are become a kind of a transition point from between the East and the West. Many a times people are kept there. I have two experiences to share. If you know Archbishop Jacques Mourad from Syria, a man who was actually kept under ISIS for almost more than 6 months, and his back is broken. He cannot stand straight. He's like this. I'm just acting out to know his plight. This man was traveling via Abu Dhabi, and he was kept for more than 28 hours sitting on a steel stool. A man who's like this for 28 hours. You can imagine the inhuman situation for an archbishop. Similar was one priest was traveling with valid visa from Congo to Mexico, and the governments kept him 6 days into detention with the claim that the visa was not verifiable. So my question is, are we also thinking about transit points where inhuman behavior shown by certain governments shown towards this? I know Scalabrini missions are very much towards the seafarers, even in our territory, but are we in the air travel, in that industry, is there anything can be done?
Thank you, Father.
Thank you. I'm Father Luis from Mexico. I'm running a migrant and refugee shelter 2 hours from the U.S.-Mexico border, based in Monterrey, Mexico, northeast. As it was mentioned before, we used to be a country of transit, but not anymore. The border is sealed. And because of that, everything changed in Mexico. We used to be the largest corridor of migrants and refugees all over the world. Because of that, we need to redesign our mission. Actually, our mission is about to protect, to promote, and to integrate, to welcome, to protect, to promote, and integrate migrants and refugees. But the point is about we need to redesign our mission because we're not anymore a country of transit. We need to look at refugee status. And because of that, we need to increase the awareness and the differences and to educate in this social phenomenon. We are more than 128 shelters all around the country. We are receiving more than 18 different countries trying to Mexico, trying to reach the US, but not anymore, it's sealed. And because of that, I would like just to make sure about how to deal with the international organization. We are actually one of the few shelters that still continue working with the UN High Commission for Refugees. They closed more than 3 shelters in Mexico, depending on the resources of the UNHCR. And on the other hand, we have to deal well with trafficking and smuggling of migrants. In this reality, I would say that it's important to expand a little bit on social sciences about the idea of political science and governance regarding how to deal with local governments in order with tackling refugees and smuggling and trafficking. I think it's a great challenge, expanding social sciences on governance, on human rights-based approach, faith-based approach shelters, dealing at local level with different kind of ideologies behind local governments. Some of them supporting migrants, but mostly against, and of course with xenophobia and racism. So I would like just to make this, how can we eventually involved on the idea of governance and implementing human rights for migrants and refugees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dietro ci sono 2.
I am John Paul, doing my doctorate in the same university here in pastoral theology and human mobility. I thank our professors here and all the resource persons who have presented the paper. Democracy always faces the danger of majoritarianism. And today, what we see in our present scenario, it is the majoritarianism that is opposing, at least some part of the world, the migration. So is it our responsibility to educate, to sensitize, to conscientize the people on the human rights, as it was mentioned? Should it not be our priority to include or incorporate into our educational system, into our religious or faith formation? A question was raised, what sort of migrants we will have, but to reverse it, what sort of people will our future migrants face? Unsensitized, uninformed, uneducated. So the action of the church or every educational institution should be focused on sensitizing, educating the people, both at the educational and religious formation level, and intensifying the social action of the church, renewing or increasing the commitment for the well-being of the migrants. The one more suggestion I would like to give regarding the migrants, refugees as agents, missionaries of social and ecclesial transformation. But we also miss out the migrants who have helped the families, who have protected the integrity and the union of the family. A contribution, what I have discovered in my pastoral engagements, the families from India, how they have helped to remain together, to go beyond the divorce and the separation, kept together the families. So it is an aspect, an accompaniment that is offered by the migrants to the families here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Here we have Ambassador Vete.
Thank you very much. Yes, Michel Vetet from Geneva, Switzerland, the Order Malta. Thanks to the organizers of this conference. It was a very outstanding opportunity to learn from each other. And clearly, I have two quick questions. One, how can we stay in contact? Second, how can we access powerful statements like, for example, the opening statement of Cardinal Tagle, and others, of course, but I think it was really excellent to meet here, and thanks again to you and to all the organizers, and best wishes to all.
Thank you, Ambassador. We will try to do our best to keep in touch and to maintain alive this network that is formed here from these conferences with communications, but as well as with the proceedings of this conference. We will prepare at our best all the speakers that have contributed to this conference, and soon, in a few weeks or months, we will come back with all the interventions that have been proposed here in this conference. So we will keep in touch.
Part of the speech of Cardinal Tagle yesterday was already reported by the Osservatore Romano in Italian. I don't know if in the English version too, but in Italian I am sure that it was already published yesterday. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to thank Don Kerwin from the Jesuit Refugee Service, and I wanted to thank all of the sponsors of this and those who organized it. It's been a great 2 days. But I wanted to get back to your theme of hope, which I think is like a really important one these days. And I wanted to praise in particular something that I found very hopeful, which was Sister Norma's talk, who spoke so very powerfully yesterday from her perspective of work with migrants, hundreds of thousands of migrants at the US-Mexico border, of the ways in which encounter can become a living thing and can remind us that we're all kind of fundamentally children of God. It's a very simple message, but I found that very powerful, particularly the effect it can have on people that we don't even associate as potential allies, like in the example that she gave, Border Patrol members who were able to be humanized as a result of her encounter with them. I think that when you start to talk about states, the situation is a little bit more grim, and coming from the perspective of the United States, it seems particularly grim at this point. And so I've been thinking about what can the church do internationally and collectively? And I feel like the teaching is very strong on the responsibilities of states, but but I'm not sure it's as strong about the leaders of those states and what the responsibilities of leaders are. And I think particularly of leaders who self-identify as Catholics. And I know that this is very controversial and difficult to deal with, but the fact is that we have a lot of Catholic leaders in the United States who identify as such, and who are behind a lot of the anti-migrant, anti-refugee policies and justify them in the worst possible ways. So I'd like to think about that a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, for sharing all these good and wonderful insights. Unfortunately, time is keeping going. So I'm very pleased and honored now to give the floor to Cardinal Fabio Baggio from the Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development, and also to Reverend Professor Daniel Grudi for the conclusions of this conference.
Buonasera, buonasera a tutti e a tutte. È un piacere, un onore essere qui in modo conclusivo. Siccome siamo in due, io farò in italiano e Daniel farà in inglese, così alterniamo anche le lingue, riposiamo le orecchie per coloro che non capiscono magari una lingua o l'altra. In questo modo cercherò di essere anche lento nell'espressione, in modo da concedere agli interpreti il tempo di poter tradurre quello che viene detto. Dicevo che sono contento di essere qui e devo portare dei saluti speciali. Proprio prima di venire qui, verso le 3 del pomeriggio, ho ricevuto una chiamata da parte del Santo Padre, Papa Leone, il quale vuole inviare a tutti voi, ciascuno in particolare, i saluti e gli auguri per questa conferenza. In una prossima opportunità, magari ci sarà l'opportunità anche di vederlo dal vivo. Gli impegni che sono troppi, questo non è stato possibile, però voleva e ci teneva, ed è per questo che mi ha chiamato, a farvi pervenire i suoi saluti, i suoi auguri e la sua benedizione. Quindi ecco, sentiamoci nel cuore di Papa Leone. È chiaro che la preoccupazione per le questioni migratorie non erano esclusive di Papa Francesco. Sono passate da un cuore all'altro cuore e rimangono sempre vive. Ed essendo anche Papa Leone rappresentante di, direi, 2 continenti o 2 espressioni culturali, mette insieme la stessa passione, la passione per il nord, la passione per il sud, che sono sempre presenti e saranno sicuramente presenti anche nei prossimi anni di pontificato, con quella passione che lo caratterizza nei confronti degli ultimi, degli emarginati, come abbiamo visto anche nell'ultimo documento che è stato pubblicato. Andiamo al tema di oggi e ringrazio appunto per avermi concesso anche l'onore di queste note conclusive, che non vogliono assolutamente riassumere quello che è stato detto, la ricchezza dello scambio che c'è stato durante questo momento e questo spazio che è stato regalato a ciascuno di noi, come dicevano anche prima chi è intervenuto, uno spazio prezioso per cui ho imparato molto durante questo tempo. E che bello che tutte queste espressioni siano raccolte per essere anche messe poi al servizio di altri ascoltatori, uditori che non hanno potuto essere presenti oggi. Io sono fermamente convinto della necessità della riflessione teologica. Ecco perché quando mi è stato proposto come dicastero, io incaricato dei migranti e dei rifugiati, di sostenere questa idea di una conferenza teologica sull'emigrazione qui all'Urbaniana, ho detto subito di sì. E così il Cardinal Cerny, Suor Alessandra Smerilli, il mio collega Anthony Epco, siamo stati tutti d'accordo nel dire sosteniamo questo sforzo e apriamo questo spazio diverso. E questa necessità della riflessione teologica potrebbe essere spiegata in tanti modi, ma ne voglio citare almeno 2. Da una parte siamo chiamati a dare ragione della nostra fede, il che significa anche dare ragione della nostra azione pastorale, perché non sia un mero esercizio, chiamiamolo così, di buona volontà e di generosità. Noi non siamo a servizio dei migranti, dei rifugiati, degli sfollati perché siamo buoni, perché ci piace, perché siamo generosi, ma lo facciamo perché questo ci viene direttamente dalla volontà di Dio e lo facciamo perché incontriamo Dio nel servizio. Però questa teofania, questa presenza del Signore in ciascuna delle persone che noi incontriamo va riflettuta, spiegata e intesa, ed ecco perché abbiamo bisogno della teologia. Secondo modo di spiegare la necessità è perché dobbiamo presentare una visione diversa del fenomeno migratorio, quella che non può essere colta dalle scienze, perché esula dalla scienza, perché è trascendente. E questo aspetto particolare del fenomeno della mobilità umana può essere colto con gli occhi di Dio. Ecco cosa vuol dire fare teologia, leggere con gli occhi di Dio. Questo ci porta alla comprensione della mobilità umana all'interno di un piano, che è il piano divino, che molto spesso è misterioso, ma va compreso nella sua totalità. E le sfide che noi scopriamo all'interno del fenomeno migratorio sono le stesse sfide che si pongono alla costruzione del regno di Dio. Il regno di Dio non si può costruire se non rispondiamo a queste sfide. La riflessione teologica non deve rinunciare alle metodologie cosiddette tradizionali, quelle che si nutrono essenzialmente delle fonti scritturistiche o di quelle patristiche o che vanno al magistero o della tradizione della Chiesa. Nel contempo, però, deve essere anche aperta questa riflessione alle nuove metodologie che sono state sviluppate soprattutto negli ultimi anni. Mi riferisco per esempio all'ascolto delle basi, all'ascolto dei protagonisti, alla ricerca di quel sensus fidei fidelium che ci ricollega direttamente alla realtà, alle gioie e speranze, alle tristezze e alle angosce della famiglia umana oggi. Il secondo punto è il dialogo, queste nuove metodologie, metodologia del dialogo e del confronto libero e continuo con tutti gli attori del fenomeno, coloro che si muovono, coloro che li accolgono, coloro che li vedono transitare, coloro che sono coinvolti nel fenomeno, coloro che li controllano, coloro che organizzano le politiche sui loro spostamenti. Un approccio sinodale nell'ascolto di tutti e di tutte, quello che ha trovato grande apprezzamento negli ultimi anni. Terzo elemento metodologico è l'approccio interdisciplinare, dove la teologia si mette in dialogo con le altre discipline, per essere da queste illuminate, ben sapendo che la verità viene scoperta insieme, non è tutta da una parte e non è solamente una luce che illumina una realtà. È quell'approccio poliedrico tanto caro a Papa Francesco. La teologia, alla fine, deve tradursi in azione della Chiesa, indicando orizzonti e cammini a chi si vuole impegnare nella costruzione del Regno. Tutti coloro che vogliono essere illuminati per capire dove essere, quando essere, che cosa fare. Allora, mi piace ricordare qui le tre parole chiave anche che abbiamo trovato negli scritti di Papa Benedetto XVI, proprio definendo questa azione della Chiesa, che è cherigma, che è annuncio. Allora, l'annuncio del Vangelo e di tutti i suoi valori, nessuno escluso, nessuno tra parentesi, tutti inclusi, senza dimenticare quella dimensione profetica che è propria dell'annuncio, i profeti hanno annunciato, che include anche la denuncia delle ingiustizie, alla quale non possiamo rinunciare. Secondo ambito di azione è la liturgia. Qui siamo chiamati, guardando al mondo migratorio, a valorizzare la ricchezza della diversità, che è espressione stessa della diversità della Trinità. Le nostre liturgie, il nostro modo di essere, le espressioni che noi abbiamo. E al tempo stesso ritornare e ribadire la centralità della comunione in Cristo come Chiesa, che è comunione nella e della diversità. Terzo punto, la diaconia. E qui ricordiamo i 4 verbi che sono stati più volte citati anche in questo incontro: accogliere, proteggere, promuovere e integrare. Sono verbi di riferimento, non sono esaustivi, ma sono comunque di riferimento, che devono essere declinati in modo diverso nelle varie zone e nelle varie regioni, perché viviamo anche realtà diverse, anche se ci sono molti parallelismi. Ognuno di noi deve trovare il suo ruolo, perché ogni apporto è necessario. Allora, alla fine non posso che complimentarmi con chi ha organizzato questo convegno, questo momento e questo spazio, e rinnovo qui l'invito a moltiplicare questi spazi di condivisione teologica, perché ne abbiamo estremo bisogno, sia per rinnovare la speranza di fronte a tanta disperazione, ma soprattutto per dar ragione del nostro lavoro e illuminare una realtà che ha bisogno di ulteriore illuminazione. E invito anche gli studenti, quelli che sono presenti e quelli che ci ascoltano, anche a intraprendere riflessioni teologiche sul fenomeno della mobilità umana, che ne abbiamo tanto bisogno. E invito gli atenei, quelli presenti e quelli che non sono presenti, soprattutto quelli cattolici, quelli che vogliono accompagnare il processo di riflessione della Chiesa, ad aprire linee speciali di ricerca e di approfondimento del fenomeno migratorio. Sicuramente l'immigrazione è presente nel nostro secolo, lo è stata nel secolo scorso e in quello prima, e lo sarà ancora di più negli anni a venire, dovuto anche a tutti gli altri fenomeni che sono adesso interconnessi, come per esempio la crisi climatica o i conflitti che continuano ad emergere in varie zone del mondo. Grazie.
Thank you, Cardinal Fabio, and thank you to everyone who helped organize this conference. This was a dream that we had to help bring people together, and I know it's been an intense couple of days, but I hope in addition to having more information that this is a rich time to make new friendships and to really continue the work well beyond this conference. I know we're all tired too, so I'll keep my remarks brief, but a couple times during these sessions, the letter of diagnosis has been mentioned, and I would just like to mention just 3 points related to it. But first, the letter was mentioned, but the actual content wasn't, and this was written in the middle of the 2nd century. And so I would just like to read these. Just one part of it, I think it makes sense, and it speaks to our own times. For the Christians are distinguished from other people neither by country, nor language, nor customs which they observe. They dwell in their own countries, but simply as sojourners. As citizens they share in all things with others, yet endure all things as if foreigners. Every foreign land is to them as their native country, and every land of their birth is as a land of strangers. They pass their days on earth, but they are citizens of heaven. They obey the prescribed laws, and at the same time surpass the laws by their lives. And it's, I think, heartening to know that as much as there are challenges in our own times, that we're not the first to face these. And to me, the first point I would just like to make, and something I often think about, is the issue of identity. And as I think about identity, there are certain core questions that come to mind that really challenge the moral imagination. And I think it gets to the heart of the challenge of narrative. And the first question is, who am I? The second, who is God? The third is, what is my responsibility to my neighbor? And the fourth is, where am I going? And I think trying to really get underneath these questions and try to figure out what are the narratives that are shaped because of that is very important. I sometimes joke about it, but I know the narratives, but it's not funny at the same time, is that the narratives, especially operative politically in our own country, have been very helpful to constructing a theology of migration because they're so different. In many ways, I think that there's a contrasting narrative between what a theology of migration is and what some of the political narratives are. And whereas the political narratives dehumanize, they degrade, they demean, I think what a theology of migration holds up is the humanity of the migrant, the dignity of the human person, but also kind of how we begin to discern the presence of God in our midst amidst the migrant. As we think about narrative, one narrative I come back to again and again, and one that I think has shaped a lot of my own thinking about migration, was Pope Francis's first visit to Lampedusa. And he was only in office 3 months, I think, at the time. And, when you think about the Pope's decision to go anywhere he went would be a political statement. But the first place he went outside of, the Vatican, more or less, was to this small forgotten island, which is a little rock in the middle of the ocean. But he had heard a story about a group of migrants that had journeyed from North Africa. They were going across the waters. These boats can hold 600 or 700 people. This boat capsized and everyone died except for 8 people. And those who survived by clinging to a fishing net. And when the fishermen to whom the nets belonged saw them, instead of saving them, they severed their nets and they cast them to die into the ocean depths. And when Pope Francis heard about this story, he was so moved by the indifference to these migrants that he went down to this area and he celebrated Mass by an ocean harbor, and he actually used a chalice made from the driftwood of a refugee boat. And it really raises the question is, what does it mean to use a chalice made from the driftwood of a refugee boat, especially in the context of Mass? In other words, in the context of a world of sin where there's such a disintegration, how does the Eucharist help name our call to communion? And how does the narrative of what's happening in the Eucharist give us some insight into what it means to be human before God? And I've often thought that it really names 3 things for us. One was the voyage of those who are considered quote-unquote nobodies in the world. In many ways, these migrants are no one to anyone. But Pope Francis recognized that these were human beings, and he wanted to recognize that they are in fact somebody. But I think thirdly, he wanted to recognize that they're connected to everybody. And I think in these days we're here because we recognize that we don't have a different humanity from those who are migrating across borders, and that something of our own humanity is tied together with those who are migrating across borders. And so at the heart of it, I think what we're dealing with is a theology of communion, and that we really have to scope out a bit and say, what is the big frame and the big picture of our lives? And is it not to really find our way back home? Is it not our need to find our connection to one another? And is it not to find our homeland once again? I think one of the ways it's harder to deconstruct that theology is when we come to Christology. So if our first question is about identity and our second is about narrative, how do we situate those narratives within the Christological narrative? At one point it occurred to me that Jesus himself was not only a migrant, he was undocumented, he was illegal, and he was an alien. He was undocumented because he was born amidst the drama of documentation in Bethlehem. He was illegal because he was born in a regular marriage. And he was an alien because he really was from another world. It's rather striking to me that God's plan to save the world would be through an illegal alien. I think that's a point of contemplation, and I think it should disrupt some of the operative narratives that we have about God, and some of the operative narratives about who we are before God. So I think there are many things that can be said. I think there's many ways that we can reflect on our world today. I think probably the more troubling thing to me as we even look at this from a contemplative perspective is really the loss of our own humanity. There is traditionally in theological studies, there's the land of unlikeness to God, which they call the regio dissimilitudinus, and the land of likeness to God, which is the regio similitudinus. And in many ways, the migration that we do as we go through this world, the question is, are we migrating closer and closer to the land of the likeness to God, or are we moving away from that? Are our attitudes leading to a deported heart? Are they leading us to become aliens to our own humanity? And are they even disconnecting us from ourselves, not only one another? So I think there are rich seeds that we can reflect on in this conference, and there's a lot of work yet ahead. But since this was a conference on hope, I end with a story that I often think about. At times when I was working at the US-Mexico border, I would go down into the mountains, or I'd go to the canals, or I'd go into the deserts, and I would try to meet migrants and to ask them a series of questions. Sometimes I would ask them what their journey's like. Oftentimes I would ask them what they think about. Sometimes I'd say, what would you say to the president of your country or of my country if you had a chance to speak with them? But there was one question I really wanted to get to in the end, and that was, what would you say to God if you can see him face to face? And this one woman from Maria 3 times had tried to cross the border. She was from Guatemala. She had gone through Mexico. She made her way up to the United States. 3 times she tried to cross the border. The first time she was mugged and everything was taken from her. The second time her coyote smuggler tried to rape her. The third time she ran out of food and she ran out of water and she collapsed and she almost died. And she was found by a Border Patrol agent who saved her life. And so after sharing this incredible story, I asked her, I said, you know, if you could talk to God face to face, what would you say? And she said to me, well, actually, I'm always speaking with God, and I know that God is always with me. She said, but if I could see God face to face, the first thing I would say to him is thank you for having been so good to me. And it was often stories like that that challenged me to recognize that there is a presence of God and of Christ that's often in disguise, that is not only people that we help, but people who challenge and transform us. And I think it's the stories of migrants that mostly have the most potential to transform our imaginations about who we are, about who God is, and who we are to one another. But my last word, I would just like to quote also a very famous Scalabrinian who many of you would have known, Lidio Tomasi. Scalabrinians have done such tremendous work in this field for so many years. But he also was very much in touch with these stories. But what he said to me many years ago, and he also said at the end of his doctoral dissertation, was, when we see the capacity of migrants to believe in God amidst unbelievable circumstances, when they find the capacity to love in the midst of such hatred, and they find the willingness to hope even in the midst of such hopeless circumstances, he says it's not that the church saves the immigrant, but it's that the immigrant who saves the church. Thank you.